During the Merethic era, Skyrim and its people were ruled by the dragon cult, the cult that worshipped the dragons. Because in the ancient Nordic religion, the dragon was the head deity, so when these Atmorans found dragons in Skyrim, they worshipped them as their god-kings. The dragons, who themselves were ruled by Alduin the World Eater, were more than happy to have this treatment, as they also saw themselves as superior. And whilst the dragons were worshipped as gods, they had Skyrim ruled on their behalf by the dragon priest. These priests passed legislation and law, and ruled Skyrim the same way a king would, and they were also extremely well trained in the ways of arcane magic. So much so that some of them even learned how they could raise themselves from the dead when Alduin returned. And these priests also knew the language of the dragons. Back on the topic of self-resurrection, there are 13 dragon priests in the game Skyrim who have done this. 8 in mainland Skyrim, and 5 in the island of Solstheim, which at the time was considered a part of Skyrim. However, like the dragons themselves, the power that the dragon priests had eventually got to their heads, and all of them soon became tyrants, which was one of the main reasons of the Dragon War, the rebellion that happened in the Merethic era between the Nords and the dragon cult. After the rebels won the war, the dragon priests were either killed, captured, or went into hiding, and the priests that went into hiding planned their resurrection for when Alduin would return. There are 13 resurrected dragon priests that are in the game Skyrim, 8 that are in mainland Skyrim, and 5 that are in the island of Solstheim, which at the time was considered a part of Skyrim. The first priest we'll talk about is Hevnarak, whose name is Dragon Tongue for brutality, and the name certainly fits, because although all the dragon priests were tyrants, he was particularly a brutal one. So much so that he used mind-controlling magic and torture to create a brainwashed army of followers, who even today, in undead form, guard his tomb of Valthoom, and that is a nice rhyme right there. Presumably during the Dragon War, a rebel named Valda discovered that Havnarak had a plan to resurrect after his death, and then went to Valthoom to prevent this reawakening. This attempt is unsuccessful. However, even in death, Valda's ghost guards the entrance of the tomb, and the Dragonborn can help Valda's ghost reach Havnarak and then defeat him. After doing so, Valda finally finds peace, and goes to rest in Sovngarde. The next priest is Croesus, or Sorrow, who can be found at Sheer Point with a dragon. However, his history is unknown. The next priest, Mordecai, or Glory. His Merethic-era history is unknown. However, in much more recent history, the Archmage Savas Aaron, who can still be found at the College of Winterhold, encountered Mordecai in his tomb of Labyrinthien during an expedition, along with 5 apprentices. They got into a fight. However, Mordecai could not be defeated by the 6, and 3 of the apprentices were killed. So rather than continuing to try and defeat Mordecai, Savras and the remaining 2 survivors sealed away Mordecai's tomb of Labyrinthien, and then Savras reanimated the 2 surviving apprentices into thralls to guard the tomb and its barrier. The next is Nakrin. His Merethic-era history is unknown. However, also major spoiler alert for the main questline of Skyrim, he guards the portal to Sovngarde itself at Skuldafn. The next priest goes by his Nordic name, and that priest is Olaf the Mad. Olaf was previously the chieftain of the Nordic city of Ragnarvald, and was a popular and successful ruler, until he became insane due to unknown causes. He then joined the dragon cult, and then ruled Ragnarvald as a dragon priest, rather as a Nordic chieftain, and this time he ruled the city as a tyrant, just as how the other priests ruled the rest of Skyrim. 2 Nordic warriors, Sarik and Torsten, attempted to overthrow Otar's regime of Ragnarvald, however were unable to defeat him, so instead they sealed him into his tomb. And those 2 warriors still guard said tomb in the form of draggers today. The next is Ragot, or anger. During the Great War, Raghot led his followers to the tomb of Forelhost, where they would remain in hiding until they were found. And they were only found long after the Dragon War ended, because by the time they were found, Skyrim now had a central kingdom with a human king, who at the time was King Harold, and an official army. When this army discovered this stronghold of Forelhost, they immediately laid siege to it, hoping to either capture or kill the remaining cultists. When the main gate was breached, Raghot and his followers retreated to the main chamber and collapsed the main stairway to temporarily halt the Nordic soldiers. Sometime later, Raghot devised a plan for all the remaining survivors of the cult in the stronghold to commit mass suicide, and so he ordered his alchemists to manufacture large quantities of poison. His chief alchemist did not approve of Raghot's instruction, so she was executed, and the remaining alchemists followed their order. When they finished their brewing, Raghot ordered that the children would be killed first by this poison, and then ordered to have the children buried. I guess the reason that it's done this way is so that Bethesda could avoid showing child corpses, because Bethesda is known for wanting to avoid things like that for obvious and good reasons. After this was done, the remaining cultists drank their poison, and then later on died in their sleep. Eventually, the attacking Nords, who were led by Skorm Snowstrider, broke through, but then they left after seeing the aftermath of this order. The next is Vokoun, or Darkness. He can be found in the Highgate ruins, however unfortunately his history is unknown. The next is Volsung, or Horror, who can be found at Volskig, if I'm pronouncing that right. His history is unknown. Those are all the dragon priests in mainland Skyrim. Now we'll go to the 5 who lived in the island of Solstheim, starting with Azidal, who in my opinion has the most interesting backstory of all the dragon priests. Azidal was previously a Nordic man who lived in the ancient city of Sarthal during the late Merethic era. I'll refer to him as Azidal because we do not know his previous name. Azidal was extremely talented in magic. He was tutored magic ever since he was a child, and by the time he reached adulthood, he surpassed all his tutors in ability. He wanted to learn more, but had nothing new to learn at Sarthal, so he left the city and left his wife and child for several years to go train elsewhere. He returned to Sarthal after several years of training, but only to discover that the city of Sarthal had been sacked and the population wiped out by the local snow elves. It was at this moment that he gave himself the name Azidal, and made an oath to exact revenge by any means necessary on the snow elves. Azidal spent more years training in the arcane arts, but this time, rather than just Skyrim, he travelled across Tamriel and learnt many new things from all different cultures, from the Dwemer to the Aelids. But later he found out that Ysgramor was returning with the 500 warriors to reclaim Skyrim from the Snow Elves, this time by military force. And when he discovered this, Azidal went to help the 500 with all his knowledge. Ysgramor and the 500 would later reclaim Skyrim and virtually wipe out the Snow Elves, and Azidal's extreme desire for revenge was finally satisfied. But this same desire, that he had for several years, and spent several years trying to satisfy, cost him his sanity. He became mad and addicted to discovering new knowledge and power. Sometime later, he decided to gain the knowledge of the dragons. This led him to the dragon cult, who made him a priest, and was rewarded with some of this knowledge. However, not even this sufficed, and was eventually tempted by the ways of Hermaeus Mora. So he went to Solstheim in search for Hermaeus Mora. However, this attempt was unsuccessful. Because of this treachery, the remaining of the dragon cult captured him in Solstheim and locked him away in the Kolbjorn Barrow, where he would spend the remainder of his days, and would become a mere footnote in history. The next is Dukan, or Dishonour, who can be found at White Ridge Barrow. His Merethic-era history is unknown. The next is Zakrisos, or Swordblood, who can be found in Bloodskull Barrow. History unknown. The next is Varlock, or Guardian. also known as Varlock the Jailer. According to Skull folklore, Varlock discovered that another dragon priest defected to the service of Hermaeus Mora and was plotting a coup against the dragons. He confronted this dragon priest about this plot, and then the two had a massive battle, which was believed to have lasted for days, and was believed to be so destructive that it tore Solstheim from mainland Skyrim. Varlock eventually won the battle, and was rewarded for this victory by the dragons by being made the ruler of the island. But there are two accounts as to what happened to this other dragon priest. The first is that after winning, Varlock was about to kill this dragon priest, however he was saved by Hermaeus Mora. So before being made the ruler of Solstheim by the dragons, Varlock swore to be ready for this dragon priest return if he ever did. Varlock swore to be ready for this dragon priest's return. The second account is that after winning the battle, Varlock imprisoned this dragon priest into his prison/tomb, and Varlock was made his jailer as well as the ruler of Solstheim. However, sometime this dragon priest escaped from his prison. It should also be noted that Varlock is the only dragon priest who doesn't have a mask, and the final dragon priest is this very priest who attempted to overthrow these dragons, Miraak, whose name translates to allegiance. Miraak was not only a dragon priest who served in Solstheim, but also the first of all dragonborns. While serving as a priest in Solstheim, he discovered a black book, and after reading this book, he enters the realm of oblivion, Apocrypha. In Apocrypha, he encountered Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge, who gave him the knowledge of the Bend Will shout, a shout that could bend the will of even the dragons, in exchange for absolute servitude. With this new knowledge, he began to plot a coup against the dragons. However, as we know, Varlock discovered this plot, but after the battle, Miraak returned to Apocrypha, either during his retreat or after being rescued from prison sometime later. Miraak then remained in Apocrypha until the 4th era when the Dragonborn discovers his new plot, to return to Tamriel and take over the island of Solstheim, and himself goes to Apocrypha to end this plot. Eventually, Miraak is defeated by the Dragonborn, and Hermaeus Mora, disappointed by this second defeat, executes Miraak himself. So those are all the 13 undead dragon priests that we find in the game Skyrim, including the 5 that we find in Solstheim in the Dragonborn DLC. And when it comes to the 8 in mainland Skyrim, once you collect all their masks, you can then go to Brumjar's Sanctuary. There you will find a shrine. However, when you first get there, the shrine is destroyed, and several of the busts that are on the shrine are missing. However, there is another mask, a wooden mask, that you can find in the sanctuary. And spoiler alert, when you put this mask on, you go back in time to when the shrine wasn't destroyed but was perfectly intact. And then you can put a mask on each of the busts. And once you do, the mouth of the dragon in the center of the shrine opens, revealing yet another mask. This unique mask is called Konarik, meaning warlord. However, it is unknown as to who was the previous owner of this mask, or even if there was one to begin with. Once you obtain this mask, you can then remove the wooden mask and then go back to the present-day Skyrim. And so that is the history of the dragon cult and the dragon priest. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.